The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back in, everyone. Hour number 2 is off and running here on First and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We hold it down every single week, talking Big 12 football and especially BYU and Utah football. And in this hour, we got to start things off with BYU's big win over the Wyoming Cowboys.
The BYU Breakdown.
Cougs take down the Pokes 34-14. And Alex, this was, I felt a game that there were some missed opportunities by BYU. Oh, yeah. Even Chase Roberts himself said BYU should have probably won this game 60-0. They left some opportunities out on the field, but still, BYU's 3-0 for a team that was maybe thought to be a 4-win team. They're looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, Jake Retzlaff had that bad pick at the beginning. He had another one that should have been picked off the very next drive. I think I was a little confused on some of his throws, and I think he probably was looking around. Here's the thing is he knows how much scrutiny he's getting every week, and yet BYU, the running back situation is very weird right now. However, your third, fourth, and fifth string running backs actually did quite well, and even Jake Retzlaff, what did he have? 10 carries for 62 yards. He had some movement on the ground as well, but obviously the big thing was they were able to get that ball going through the air. They mixed it up. Chase Roberts had a phenomenal day, 6 catches, 129 yards, and he only had 1 catch in the second half. So he did tons of work, and everybody was getting involved. It was nice to see. I mean, look, Gary Bohannon got in the game, threw a nice little bullet to Reiner Swanson. Was it Reiner Swanson who was the tight end who caught that one? I mean, look, there was a lot to be said about this game, but not the least of which is the defense, the Jay Hill defense. Holding and listen, the Wyoming quarterback. Look, we heard about the offensive line being woeful, right, during the week. It turns out the offensive line, they showed up to play a little bit harder than I think that people may have anticipated, because you didn't see as much pressure from BYU this week. But what you did see was awful quarterback play, and I'm telling you, they rattled Wyoming quite a bit, and that was not a good Wyoming team, and BYU made them look even worse. But, yeah, you're right. The 34-14 score doesn't really reflect what the game really felt like. It was a little bit more lopsided than that, but that means you have some stuff to clean up if you're Kalani Sitake this week.
I will say Wyoming, they did have opportunities to get some additional points as well. If they had a quarterback that had any ounce of accuracy, they could have scored a few more points, because there was a 4th down play where they beat Talon Alfrey into the end zone, and Svoboda just straight up missed his receiver, and I think it was Jalen Sargent, and it wasn't even in the same zip code. And BYU had missed opportunities too, and you bring up Jake's first interception, and I thought I was okay with that, because ultimately Wyoming took over on their own 1-yard line. It felt
like a punt, in a way.
It was like a punt, but then there was that one where he just throws a deep ball, and there's 2 BYU receivers off to the right, and a good contingent of Wyoming defenders, and it was closer to the Wyoming defenders, nowhere close to the BYU receivers. So mixed bag passing for Jake Retzlaff, and I think also too that the running game, I come away feeling like, yes, they did enough, but man, you need LJ Martin back as soon as possible. You need Hinckley Rapati back as soon as possible. LJ's dealing with an ankle, Hinckley a knee. And I thought Miles Davis was okay. He had 7 or 15 yards, 8 carries.
8 carries, 15 yards. That's not okay. That is not good.
It wasn't good. I mean, I feel like there were moments, though, he had like a chain mover or two. I had low expectations coming into the game with those guys.
Why no Enoch Nawahine? Because we heard all week about how it was going to be the Enoch Nawahine and Miles Davis show, and it didn't turn out to be anywhere near that.
Yeah, Enoch, he got banged up, and he was going through warm-ups, pregame warm-ups. He was suited up for the game, but he got banged up to where he did not even play.
In practice? Yes,
this week. And so he doesn't even go. And then so that's your third-string running back. So you had your top three guys, or four-string running back, excuse me, three out of your top four running backs banged up coming into this game. So then your second-string guy was Sione Imoa, no relation to the linebacker Sione Moa. I think they're actually cousins, but it's different guys. And they
throw the Imo in there so that you know the difference, right?
Yes, so you know the difference. But the best running back I think out of this group tonight was Pokayawa Hunga, who was part of the trick play that ended up being a 30-yard pass completion.
Flashy
to
dude.
Chase Roberts.
I like the speed. It was nice to see. It was nice to see him out there and kind of. I liked what he looked like, and you could tell because he's a true freshman, right? Isn't that what isn't that? I mean, these are young dudes who came in and got some carries, man.
Pokai is a true freshman. Sione Imo, a true freshman. Miles Davis, he's a fifth-year junior. He's been around for a while. And then Jake, and credit to Jake. He had 6 carries, 62 yards, as you noted, but he didn't put the ball on the turf at all. And he got upended on one where he was spinning.
It was a helicopter.
And he could easily lost it, and he didn't. So he deserves his props there for not putting the ball on the ground, because for the first 2 weeks, even against Southern Illinois, he had a carry that ended up with the ball on the ground. So he took care of the football when he did run. And if L.J. Martin and Hinckley are out for an extended period of time, Jake's going to have to be a factor on the ground, or maybe somehow find a way to utilize Gary Bohannon. He had 3 carries as well for 11 yards. And I will say Gary Bohannon, his cameo late in the game, it did get a big roar from BYU fans that were in War Memorial, because I think BYU fans, they really want to see what he's got. And he looked pretty good. Again, it's nothing that's going to say, is there a quarterback debate now this week? No, that's not the case. But, Gary is, for a guy that had not thrown a football in a game in 2 years, that was a nice ball he threw, that first one to Reiner Swanson.
Let me ask you this: do you think that the leash gets a little shorter, so to speak, when you're taking on a team like Kansas State? Would they pull the plug early in a game if he throws a pick, right off the bat against Kansas State, or puts the ball on the turf?
I'm trying to figure out what would be the scenario that gets A-Rod and Kalani to pull the trigger, because these guys have a lot of patience, and they just do not seem to do that at all. And I really felt like this was going to be the year where they would do that if needed.
But you do it against you. But you do look, Wyoming. You can be patient, and I feel like Kansas State. Maybe if it is that first throw of the entire game, or the first drive of the game, because he has given the ball up the first drive of the last 2 weeks, and you know what? I know it was different this week than it was last week, and both were no harm, no foul, because the defense stopped it, and then they were able to score on the very next drive. But those are missed opportunities either way. That's the way the coaches look at it, and that's the way that it really was.
And what's scary too is next week they're going to go up against a Kansas State team that has, as a collective group, one of the best secondaries in the Big 12, and they still gave up 11 catches to T-Mac, the Arizona star, McMillan, but he's always going to get his.
Yeah,
it was
but zero touchdowns. Noah Fafita threw zero touchdowns.
That's the thing is K-State's got a pretty good secondary, and those passes that Jake was throwing against Wyoming, they probably get picked. And I think that's the feeling of, yes, the final stat line, just looking at it on its own and not getting context involved, it looks pretty good. But I feel like there's still this feeling of, oh, no, what's he going to do against, power conference competition? Because against power conference teams, he has not looked good at all, and including the win last week against SMU. Jake has struggled against power conference teams. His 2 best performances as a BYU Cougar have come against Southern Illinois and Wyoming, both of which nothing to write home about this season. So it's really going to ratchet up next week. And I think you make a good point that if it goes south in a hurry, you've got to be a little bit more urgent, because this is Big 12 play. And I think that you do not want to replicate what happened last year, where you start out 3-0 and then reality kicks in once you get into the league, because you've got a real opportunity. If you found a way to break through and spring an ups against K-State, man, Alex, I think that would be one of the best wins, maybe top 3 win in the Kalani Sitake era, just from a from what it means for establishing yourself in this conference. And they're knocking on the door. They're establishing an identity defensively, but the offense just still has this big question mark week after week against power conference teams because Jake is kind of maddening with some of his play at times. But, man, he gives you some glimpses that go, man, that looks really good with his arm talent.
Yeah, I think, they're the frustrating throws. But then when he was able to get one, and you saw obviously that Darius Lassiter, when he catches that touchdown, that was a heck of a play. He ducked out from a defender, he throws across his body and puts it right on the money, and then all he had to do was turn around, put that ball over the plane, and then they walked over. You could tell they kind of had like a little bit of a hey man, kind of moment, a little bit of hug it out kind of situation because it was frustrating, when you work all that week and you and I would say, and I guarantee this is the case, the reps in practice are looking really, really good with Jake Retzlaff. Obviously, we've heard that. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes in practice. And then you get into game time and things get a little bit more dicey, You getting more nervous or whatever it is that he does. But there's a feeling, too, from BYU fans that's like, this is the Jake Retzlaff that you get every week, is a guy who is pretty inaccurate and then has some flashes. And pretty inaccurate against Kansas State is not going to get you the same result as pretty inaccurate against Wyoming. You're exactly right. All right, let's take another break here. We'll come back. We've got more to chop up around the corner. We brought you sound last hour from Kalani Sitake. This hour, let's bring you some sound from Kyle Whittingham and the win that the freshman quarterback Isaac Wilson delivered up in Logan yesterday. And we'll talk a little bit about what Kyle Whittingham, because he's a no-nonsense guy. He'll tell you how it was. We'll listen to that next. Stay right here. It is 1st and 12 on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.